Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Kum learning a block Gemara. Today's blot second day Chalamoid is of Chav Dalad. Maybe we'll quickly go through the Mishnah again because the Gemara is on the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah. Ein Sodin Dogin, the Mishnah, the Chav Gimel base at the bottom. You're not allowed to go ahead and catch fish. Min Habe Borim from the ponds. The Yomtiv and Yomtiv, because you're not allowed to capture fish. The Ein Noistin Lifneim and Zainis, nor can you put food for them because it requires an effort, if there's an effort, and the fish can take care of themselves. Worst comes to worst, the larger ones eat, gobble up the smaller ones. And why can't you actually, if you're allowed to cook and bake and all that, you can do all these other malachas, why can't you go ahead and trap animals or catch fish? So the machlek is the Rishonim. Some Rishonim, including Rashi, say the reason is because trapping animals or catching fish you could have done yesterday, and then bring it into a little, a bowl, a fish bowl, and keep it there alive till Yom Tov. There's no reason to do it on Yom Tov, and therefore it's forbidden. Other Rishonim Torah disagree. They say when it comes to Eichel Nefesh, we don't make that cheshbon. Oh, you could have cooked it yesterday. It's only machshidim, only the things to prepare. So they all follow Rabbeinu Chananu, who says that only from the harvesting and onwards can you go ahead and you only from like kneading and onwards are you permitted to do those things which are very close to the final cooking and baking. But if you go back too many steps, that's forbidden. Like harvesting the field, you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov, because even though it has to do with food, because the Torah didn't permit that. And the same thing here, trapping is too far removed from the eating. And that's why it's forbidden. Okay, however, but you are allowed to trap animals and birds if they're inside a pen. The nice name is and so too you can give them food if there's no food available, or winter time and there's no grass to feed on, or in the summer and people are trampling there all the time. Rashbag says, we'll see later whether he's arguing or just defining. Not all of these places are equal. The rule is as follows: if wherever the animal is, you still require further steps to trap it, then it's us. You're still trapping on Yom Tov. But if the say that finds itself in a very small area, that therefore you'll soon see the criteria. If there's no trapping anymore, mutter is permitted. Okay, we're up to the Gemara of Daled Omer Aleph. It's 2 lines on the top of the page. But let me ask you a question. It says in a Beitza the following, which seems to differ from our Mishnah, actually contradict our Mishnah. It says that Beibodin Sholchaya, if you have these material last time, literally it's a zoo, or you have, let's say, a pen, where you have animals there, v'shaleif as a birds, ein sodin mehem b'Yom Tov. You're not permitted to go ahead and trap them on Yom Tov, which is exactly the opposite of a Mishnah. Our Mishnah says chaya and if you could, and here it says chaya if you can't. The ein noisni lifnei mazonis, and as a result of that, you can't feed them. Kasha chaya kasha. If there's a contradiction between chayas and between birds. So when it comes to chayas, it's not a problem. I can say there's an argument that we know about in the Mishnah. Perhaps the author of our Mishnah and the author of the Beitza are having the same argument. Now, what are we talking about? Because we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says on Shabbos. What is considered trapping on Shabbos? It says the hatzod tzipor. If you go ahead and you chase a bird and you capture a bird, lemigdal in a box. So now the bird has been trapped. Or tzvi, a deer lebayis. So you force the deer into your house and you close the door. So now the deer is trapped. A house is considered like a small, tiny enclosure, and therefore the animal you just trap, the bird you trap. Chayiv, you are chayiv. So it seems from here, according to Rabbi Yehuda, only lebayis and chayiv. Only when it's in a house which is mamish tiny. I will remember the house and then was tiny. Even a mansion, a beer was only like 10 amas. But when it comes to let's say, an enclosed area, which usually is much larger than that, it's not considered trapping. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the animal finds itself before Yom Tov in one of these beit bar in a large enclosed area, and since it's not considered as if on Shabbos, if you're to force the animal into this, it's not considered as if you trapped it. So on Yom Tov, if you go there and you try to catch the deer or something, it's as if you just trapped it right now. So that's Rabbi Yehuda, and that is what this Beitza is. But our Mishnah follows a Chacham who say tzipor lemigdal. The bird, I agree with you. Once you put it in a little box, is considered trapped. But tzvi, when it comes to the deer, lebayis, when it comes to the deer only in the house. If you put it even in this enclosed area, it's considered trapped. So according to Chachamim, if you walk into this enclosed area on Yom Tov and you take the deer, you're not trapping further because it's already been trapped. So the author of our Mishnah is Rachamim. So we understand when it comes to the Chaya, the two opinions. What we don't understand is the oifas are oifas kasha. Everyone agrees over here that as soon as you put a bird in the migdal, it's considered trapped, which means that it's in your house. It's not considered trapped because it can fly around, and yet our Mishnah says that you're allowed to in your house to go ahead and catch, even from a bird, you can go ahead and catch the bird as if it's been already trapped. You can tell me, maybe also no, not a problem. Depends if this enclosure has a roof or doesn't have a roof. If it has a roof, then as if Shabbos, if you were to force the bird there, it's as if you trapped it. But therefore, on Yom Tov, if you go in there, step in there, and take the bird, you're no longer trapping, and that's our Mishnah. And the Bryce is talking about only in the migdal it's considered trapped, because in a Beber, in this enclosed area, if there's no roof, it's as if it's still free, you can just fly out, and therefore on Yom Tov it's further trapping if you're going ahead. So therefore we can explain the Bryce as well. It says it doesn't make sense because a bayis, a house, is kebiber, it's kebebar mekoridami. Remember, the only time that they say it's considered trapped by bird if it's in a migdal, in a little box. But in a house, even though it has a roof, of course the bird can fly around everywhere. It's free, and therefore it's not considered trapped on Shabbos. So on Yom Tov, you would not be able to go in there and trap the bird because you're trapping it further. So Hakam Mishnah says you can. And Beila Yehuda Beirabana Tzipul Migdalin only in the box, but the bayis like not in the house. Amar Rabbi Huna. We're talking about depends the kind, not the kind of place, but the kind of bird. Sort of a docile bird or not. There's a tzipper dror, a bird that loves to be free. It lives in your house as if it's outside in the field, knows how to find every nook and cranny in the house and have his freedom. It's called a dror, freedom. Or dror, Rashi says the base of the word dror is the definition of free, which is very problematic for us, by the way. Rashi says the definition of free is from the word dira, because you can go wherever, choose wherever you want to go and live wherever you want to live. No state lines blocking anybody. You're free. That's the definition of freedom. Movement, freedom of movement. So we're talking about a wild bird. That's why we say that in the house it's not considered trapped yet. And if you trap it on Yom Tov, you're there because it has no modus. It's not disciplined. And I'm just talking about a domestic bird. The it lives in the house just like in the field. It feels free. Says Gemara, now that you're making a distinction, other distinctions that are saying it's an argument. So now that you tell me it's not an argument, it just depends the kind of bird. Then I forget about saying it's the Mishnah Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. I can actually work it out all according to the Rabbanan. Sometimes a chaya in Yom Tov is not considered trapping if it's inside an enclosed area. Sometimes it is. Depends. Chaya chaynam lekash. Haba baby cotton in a small enclosed area, it's not considered trapping on Yom Tov. And haba baby cotton in a large enclosed area is still considered trapping. What's the definition of a small enclosure or a large enclosure? Amar Abashi. Abashi gives three different definitions. If you go into this enclosure and you have to chase, and you need to chase the deer, one jump, one leap, and you're holding on to the deer already. Paper cotton, that's obviously a very small, tiny enclosure. Anything beyond that, you have to physically run after it, and baby god looks at a large enclosure. And therefore, on Yom Tov, if you're in a large enclosure, it's considered like you're further trapping. Wherever there are a lot of corners, Beber Godel is considered a large enclosure because the animal can hide or move around. Anything else is just a circle or something, Beber Cotton, that's considered a tiny enclosure. Third, if the shadows of the walls overlap, the north wall and the south wall shadows overlap, so it's quite small. Is Beber cotton, that's considered small. The Eidach, anything larger than that is Beber Gadol. Then the Mishnah said, Shimon will say, like Kol HaBeberin, Beberin Shavna, they're all equal. Amar Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Meshmuel, Halach, the Halach like Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Yosef said, name, you name Meshmuel, the Halach is like Shimon ben Gamliel. Amalei Abaye, you think the halacha as if to say that Rabbi Shmuel is actually arguing with Tanakama. So Abaye said to him, Halacha miklal de pligi. Are you telling me that Rabbi Shmuel is arguing and he's making this distinction of whether you still have to trap further or not? And the Tanakama doesn't agree with that? I thought that he's just trying to explain the Tanakama who says that on Yom Tov there's no trapping if it's an enclosure. What Tanakama holds, no matter how large the enclosure is, there's no violation of trapping. Amalei said, "My nafkalach minhag. Who cares? Doesn't matter. They argue. They don't argue. Either way, the halacha shingamil. And if they don't argue, it's better. Everyone agrees. And if they do argue, it doesn't matter. The halacha is still shingamil." So Abaye said those famous words, Amalei. So Abaye said to his teacher, and he said, Gemara, Gemara, are you telling me I should just learn Gemara, whether I understand or I don't understand? And Zemar to hey, the whole Gemara is like a song. And when you learn, you're supposed to understand what you're learning. I need to know what the Shimon Gamliel actually holds. Does he agree? Doesn't he agree? Yep, it's a Gemara, you learn Gemara, and Zemar to hey, what is it, a song or something? What is it? Says the Gemara further, this is the rule. If it's lacking any more trapping, what do you mean lacking more trapping? To continue, similar discussion we just had a minute ago. If a person says, Hava, go into that enclosed area, and Hava, let's bring a net, let's capture the deer. Even though it's an enclosed area, if you use the term or the expression, let's capture, let's trap it, obviously you still have to trap it, that's forbidden. What about over the geese and hens? We say havan mitzudav. That's how you normally talk. You say, let's bring let's try to find some kind of a net or something, some kind of a strategy in how to trap it. Right. So according to you, that's considered a large enclosure that should be forbidden on Yom Tov. Somebody traps these things, and the yoina hardisois, and the yoina from the place called, or the doves from the place called hardisa, or these are very domesticated doves that grow up in your house, is potter. It says clearly you are potter. But why are you potter? Since you have to use the expression "let's go trap them," according to you, that's still trapping on Yom Tov. Amar Rabbi Huna Shmuel says Rabbi Huna, the son of Huna, the name of Shmuel. There's a difference in between, but other animals say let's trap them. We consider trapping on Yom Tov, and when it comes to hens and all that, it's not. And what's that? Halalu bon lekleven le'edav. The hens and the roosters and all of these birds we just mentioned, the geese, they always go back to their nest, or they go back to the resting place at night. So they know where their home is, and that's why it's so easy to trap them. And therefore they're always considered trapped, even when they're not at the nest, the resting place, because they generally don't go too far away and so on. But halolu ain't boin lekleven le'edav. These other animals, the deer, they don't go back any particular place at night where they to rest. So therefore, if you have to chase after them in an enclosed area, or let's say let's figure out a way how to trap them, that's called trapping. Says the Gemara, what about the doves? What about the doves by a chicken coop, or by the doves that hang around upstairs, and they do fly around further out? The boyin lekleven le'edav. They do, nevertheless, at night come back, but they're much freer. And Betanya, we learned Hatzad, according to you, because they go back at night to their resting place, and even during the day, there's no trapping involved. It's not called trapping because they're sort of still domesticated. Yet we learned in the Beitza Hatzad, Yoyin Yeshayvach, for Yoyin Aliyah, Utzeporim, and pigeons, Shikonu, Betzefichin, Bebedas, that these are boards extending from the walls around the closed area. Chayiv, it says if you're trapped, but they go back at night, according to your logic. They're never really free. Halalu boin lekleven le'edav. These come back at night. And it's your responsibility to feed them. And therefore, it's considered as if they're already by you. There's no trapping anymore. That's the hens and so on. But the halalu, however, the other birds, they find their own food, so therefore they don't feel beholden to you, and for you to go ahead and trap them is considered trapping on Yom Tov. That's one answer. Ramari says hani avidi lirbuye, that these doves over there that are a bit out in the wild, they generally run away from people, and therefore you need to come up with a strategy how to trap them. When it comes to roosters, hens, and all that, loy avidi lirbuye, they generally don't run away from people. Says the Gemara, cool. Now maybe we're talking about. They also, you walk over to them, you'll see they sort of run away. The lekleven kamrin and the avi lirabuye. I'm talking about even when they come to the resting place. Those other birds, if you come close, they'll run away, they'll fly away. The hen and rooster will come to the resting place, they're not going anywhere. They stay there. So therefore, it's not really trapping. You're allowed to do that on Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah further. What about mitzvah? Is chayev bedogim? If you have these traps, that these nets and so on, that you trap birds and animals and fish, awesome. If let's say you prepared it before Yom Tov, and you didn't see there anything the previous night, and you come to the next morning, and you see what do you call it? And you see fish there, or you see whatever, an animal. Probably it was caught on Yom Tov, and you're not allowed to have it. You're not take it on Yom Tov. Elim can, unless you know for sure, for a fact, that it was captured, trapped before Yom Tov. In other words, if you have a suffix, what happened? If you have a suffix when it was trapped, we're machmer, you're not allowed to benefit from it on Yom Tov itself. There's a story with a guy. Brought fish to Rav Gamliel on Yom Tov, and he said, technically they're permitted, even though I don't know when they were captured yet. So, when they were caught yesterday, today. So I hold that a suffix muchen, a suffix prepared today, is still permitted. But I don't want to have any benefit from this guy. And Rashi says an interesting thing. I hate him. Interesting. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Ma'isa list of the Mishnah starts off saying, if you're not sure, if you're doubtful when it was trapped, you're not allowed to benefit from a Yom Tov. And then you bring me a story, an incident where he says technically you're allowed to. Says, when does the Mishnah bring a story to contradict the din that is trying to present? Says, you're right. Chesuri Mechse, there were a number of words missing. This is what should it say. If it's a suffix, it's forbidden. However, Rabbi Gamliel disagrees and he says matir. And in fact, Ma'isa Nami Benochri Echad, the story of the guy. Excuse me. Shahebi dog and Ram Gamliel brought fish to Gamliel. And he said, "But Tony permitted. I don't want it." Ein halacha halacha is not like him. A suffix muchen is forbidden on Yom Tov. In fact, others learn on the follow that he made the same comment, but on the Beitza. And there you have explicitly the name of the person who argues. Tanya learns suffix muchen. Ram Gamliel is matir, and Rabbi Yeshua. You said Rabbi Yeshua asas. It clearly says it's asas. I'm going to give Mishmur halacha ki Rabbi Yeshua. Others say that this comment was actually made in the following Beitza. Tanya, we learned you're allowed to shecht min hanagar. You're allowed to shecht an animal from these enclosed areas because they're already trapped already. And the garden means there's little pools of water everywhere, because generally in these enclosed areas they would have their some ponds or something for the animal to be able to drink from. If you found an animal caught trapped in a net, machmaris are different kinds of nets, and you're not sure when it was trapped. Today, forbidden. Yesterday, permitted. We're machmir. You're not allowed to benefit from it. That's the first opinion. And Shimon says it depends. But let's say you came umatzan, you found the net mekukolim el. It's a very long net. Rashi says the net used to be a meal long, or half a meal long. So if on one end of the net, far away from it, an animal got caught and he's fighting his way out, he drags the whole net with it, and the whole net becomes a bit rumpled. So if you see you're not in the mood to walk into the other end, but you see on your end that it's been messed up, then you know that probably there's a chay there already caught out of Yom Tov, and you're therefore allowed to have it on Yom Tov. So Bo Matzah Mikol, you found the net ruined. Is made of Yom Tov, you do, and you know for a fact Yom Tov. Obviously, it was already trapped, and that is an animal there caught in the netting somewhere, and everything. Umuton is permitted. Or what happens with Bo Matzah Mikol be Yom Tov? What about if you came and you found on Yom Tov that definitely happened on Yom Tov because last night you checked out and there's nothing wrong with the net, and now you see it, so it happened. I was in Yom Tov. It should be Yom Tov. It happened today, but Asurin is forbidden. Now, it's so have a little bit of contradiction. First, it says if you definitely know that it was there on Friday, out of Yom Tov, definitely out of Yom Tov is permitted, as if to say, but a suffix, it's not. And then you say you definitely know that it happened on Yom Tov, forbidden, but as if to say it's a suffix, it's permitted. So which one is it? Says the Gemara, you say, you definitely, if you had to find it ruined, you know for a fact that it was trapped, you know for a fact it was already trapped yesterday. Time, the only reason is the you know for a fact that it happened yesterday. If you're not sure, look at the end. Dafka, in other words, it says that Dafka bo Dafka, if you found that it was ruined on Yom Tov, so that's when it's forbidden. Then we say it was trapped today. Time only be the bo you found that it was trapped. Fake if you're not sure out of Yom Tov. But if you're not sure, then we'll say maybe it happened at Yom Tov mutter. That suffix is mutter. Which one is it? The Gemara, it's not two separate cases. This is how you're supposed to learn the Mishnah. If you found that it was ruined out of Yom Tov, we know from out of Yom Tov the Tzaydu was trapped yesterday with Taran. Fake if you're doubtful, Nasik Mishnah Tzaydu Yom Tov. It's just if you're doubtful, it's just as if you definitely know it was trapped on Yom Tov and it is forbidden. In other words, a suffix, if it was trapped on Yom Tov or not, we are machmir. And this is where the comment was made. Halacha Rav Shimon ben Elazar, halacha Rav Shimon ben Elazar, who says that a suffix, if it was prepared or not, is asur. But if you found that definitely the net was ruined yesterday, so you know for a fact that it was trapped yesterday, even though you didn't take the animal with you, it is all right. And he said, Mutarim, Rav Shimon said that what Rav Shimon said that it is. Gamliel said that it's mutter. The guy brought it. He said technically it's mutter the fish, but I am not going to have it. Mutarin lemai. What do you mean when he says mutter? What does mutter mean? Rav says it's not muktzah. We're not, we don't know when the fish was caught yesterday, today. Even Gamliel was lenient and says, well, for suffix, we're going to be lenient, not insofar as to be able to eat it, because maybe it was trapped today, but insofar as not muktzah. It's only a suffix, and muktzah drabanan. You know what? We're going to be lenient in muktzah. But not that he permitted to eat it. Levi says, no, he goes a step further. Mutarin ba'achila. That we don't know when it happened, so we can be lenient and say it probably happened before Yom Tov, and you can go ahead and eat. Rav said a very important rule. La'olam, always, al yemana adam atzre beis hamedrash. You should hang around a yeshiva where there's shiurim constantly and learning and update your learning. Well, I feel even for a moment. I'll tell you why. Danov Levi have kamin der kamin Rabbi. I and Levi were both students by Rebbe. Ki amra lahashmaita. When Rebbe said the law, but at night when he gave us the shir, Amar he understood mutarim ba'achila. He said Gamliel holds that you're allowed to even eat it on Yom Tov. Well, but Safra the following morning, Amar he changed and he says mutarim lekabel. But Gamliel was lenient only if you don't know when it was trapped. No, you can. It's not muktzah. That's it. He's I know the Havoy Be Medrasha. I was in the base of Medrash at night and in the morning. Hard to be, I changed my mind. But Levi, the Lohavi Be Medrasha, Levi wasn't there. Like hard to be, he didn't change his mind, and Levi insists that you're allowed to, according to Gamliel, allowed to even eat it. So we're going to ask a question. Mason asks a question, and it says, if a guy brought a gift to a yid, I feel a dog, even fish, hamid fulamin that are still moist, which gives you the impression that it's probably just caught today on Yom Tov, so the din l'chayda should be asur, or peidas b'nei yaimen, or fruits that look like it was from today, mutarin, they are permitted. They are permitted. Gamliel holds, they are permitted. Now, what are we talking about permitted? All he means is muktzah in the shop. It makes sense. Why? Because when it comes to the fruit, you tell me definitely was picked today. So it's not even a suffix, it's a vada. If it's a vada, how can everybody holds you cannot eat fruits that fell on Yom Tov? So it must be he's talking about muktzah. And that's what's permitted. Okay, so that supports Rav's view in Rabbi Gamliel. That you're permitted to eat it. Tell me, I can understand the case of the fish, because maybe you're allowed to eat it because maybe it happened yesterday. But the fruits we're talking about, it's very clear that it was fell today. If it fell today, how can you eat it? It's noiled. Or the Gezerah Shavitlish. Says Gemara, well, the time, let me ask you. So you're happy that we're not talking about eating, we're talking about just touching muktzah. Are you allowed to touch fruits that fell on Yom Tov or on Shabbos? It's muktzah also. But the time fruits that fell today, Mishari Betilta, you're permitted to muktzah. So what's the difference? I'll explain to you what happened there. Not that it actually fell today, we're not sure. It's a suffix. Ella Bekivre, we're talking about fish, the adime that are still a bit moist and it's still red. And upaid, so therefore it's doubtful, was it caught yesterday and still a bit fresh, or it's caught today? Upaid, we're talking about fruits, the kivishi biyarka that you soaked it in vegetables, so therefore it could have been that it was what? That it fell down yesterday, but you made sure you preserved it, that it was fresh. And therefore it's a suffix. And because it's a suffix, the Bryce is saying here, according to Gamliel, you even, according to Levi's version, you even allowed to eat it. My so why by the case of the fruits it says it's a day old, it's within this day. They look so fresh, they look like it was today. If a guy brings a present to a yid, the Yom Tov on Yom Tov, if that particular species, whatever it is, of that kind of fruit is still growing on the tree, so therefore chances are that it was only picked today, then mechuber aser. Mechuber is aser is forbidden, because we'll say probably before Yom Tov still hanging on a tree, so it is muktzah. And even Reb Shimon, who doesn't believe generally in muktzah, so certain types of muktzah he holds, and like dried figs and raisins, all that, because it was totally out of your mind that you're going to eat it on Shabbos, so it's muktzah. And if it's attached to the tree, you had no intention of eating on Shabbos. But something is so removed from your mind, even Reb Shimon's bite, it's muktzah. So if this particular fruit, everything's still, it's not the season yet for it to fall down. Everything's still on the tree, then it must have fallen down just today, and it's muktzah. Now, ula erev, and that night, nami asurin, you still cannot eat the fruit, even though it's already that night. The time that it takes to pick the fruit and bring it to you. What happens is nothing in the area growing similar to that fruit. Mutter, then it is permitted. We'll assume that it came from far away and it must have done before Yom Tov. Sorry, so they must assume that that this guy came and brought it from the tchum. He must have bought it a while ago. But chutz l'tchum, if they brought in fruits from outside the tchum, aser, it is forbidden. If a goy brought to you outside the tchum, so it's not a very for a goy, but for you, you couldn't have brought it in yourself, and the goy brought it for you on Yom Tov, it is aser. Not because muktzah, because if it's muktzah, how come it says he brought it for you, even though you may not eat from it, another may eat from it. If it's muktzah, what's the difference which eat it is? So the idea is that we are lenient. He says here, and also more than that. If the reason is, okay, again, if the reason is because of muktzah, what's you another yid? Why other yid can't? If the reason is because an avera was done, or not avera, an iser was done for you, then all yidden cannot benefit from it. If an iser and Shabbos was done, if a guy lights a candle for a particular yid, no yid can benefit from that candle. So what's pshat over here? That why do we make a distinction between one yid and the next yid? So we're answering because isat chumin is only midrabanan. And therefore, we decided not to be so strict. Only for you, the person that he brought it for, Anisa was done to Rabbanan, we are going to prohibit. And what do you call it? But not for another Yid. Or another possible reason is we are worried that you next time might send somebody to bring it for you from outside of Chum. So therefore, then it's only relevant to the person that made that Gzeira or not. Now, there's a fascinating Rashi here in the bottom. It's just fascinating the way Rashi writes here. There's a big argument when we said that, okay, the guy, it was brought to you, was attached to a tree, it fell down, somebody brought it to you, or you took it. You cannot eat from it until B'rdei Sheyasu. Rashi says it doesn't mean wait till Motzei Yom Tov. It means wait till that night. So let's say this happened the first day Yom Tov. That night, Rashi says, if tomorrow is Yom Tov, then today was a weekday. And if today was Yom Tov and fell down, then tomorrow was a chayil. So Rashi shows the second night of Yom Tov, you can go ahead and eat from the fruits. That's the Chdei Sheyasu. Then he brings here, this is interesting, Rashi writes it. He says, I have a Rebbe called Rabbi Yaakov. And the problem is, I wasn't zoichet to ask my Rebbe Rabbi Yaakov the question what he would rule in this particular case. Because in my city, everyone used to eat the second night of Yom Tov the fruits that fell down. And I took it for granted that that's the halacha. And after my Rebbe died, so I never even thought of asking, but after my Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov, died, I heard that another Rebbe of mine, Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi, that he actually said it's forbidden until Motzei Yom Tov completely. And everyone in his city follows his rule. And he says, and also the Baal Halachas G'deilos and other Rishon rules that it's forbidden. So he said, I went to Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi and I had a debate with him. And he actually says, in Yiddish it says, I spoke to my Rebbe, I had a vekuach with him, had a debate, and I couldn't sway him at all. And what was the basis of my Rebbe's prohibition? Because it says Chidei Sheyasu. And he translated literally, when you are able to do this. And since the second night, I don't care, Yom Tov, this whole pilpul we made. The fact is, the second night of Yom Tov, you cannot pick it from the tree. So you got to wait till the first opportunity to pick it, which is Motzei Yom Tov. That's what he says. And I said, no. Kadei Sheyasa means, the Monoshah that we just said a minute ago. And he said, the Pasha said, otherwise the Gemara would have said, he said, not B'rdei Sheyasa. The Gemara said, wait till Motzei Yom Tov, B'rdei Sheyasu. That's what the Gemara should have said. And then he said, I found my Rebbe's Rebbe, Rabbeinu Geshem Hagala. He writes just like me. And now I just got a letter, he said, Rashi says, from a great man who was an older man, and he was sitting in Yeshiva learning from Rome. His name is Rab Kolonimus. Uboki bechol hashas. He knows the entire Gemara, and he ruled like me. So Rashi, it's very interesting how Rashi explains the development of his pursuit of Allah. We don't often have Rashi ruling, and of course his grandchildren come out against him, and they agree with the means Mitzvah Yom Tov. And their reason is that the reason for the prohibition is not because something was usher, and therefore you shouldn't have any benefits, and then you can make your whole pulpit. It's because we're scared that next time you're going to do that very yourself. That's why. Next time you're going to pick it yourself or whatever. That's the reason why. So what's the difference? The first day Yom Tov, the second day Yom Tov. Both days it's forbidden to pick. It's just very interesting language of Rashi, and like a very, Rashi is talking, to his chaverim, telling him how he developed